Hey, this is Eric from Alabama.
And I'm Jerry, high above Boston Harbor at the Encore Resort Casino in Everett, Massachusetts. We want to welcome our listeners from the United States and around the world. It's another Sunday podcast. And a good Sunday to you, my friend Eric. How are you today?
And the same to you. I'm doing well. How are you?
Thank you. I am better than I deserve. I am excited about this episode today.
I am as well. In fact, it just so happens that I am sitting in the perfect environment for this particular episode. I have one lamp on in the house. It's dark. And a thunderstorm is rolling through. I don't think you can hear it because the microphone is really, really good. There is a thunderstorm rolling through, so there's thunder and lightning right here where I'm at in Alabama.
Well, that is, in fact, the perfect setting for tonight's episode. We have been teasing this episode for a number of weeks now, and we've been getting questions from our listeners. When are you going to have the ghost story person on and the paranormal story person on? And that is this episode. And if our listeners could see you, you are in the perfect setting. You actually look like an apparition tonight. So before we bring our guest on, she's a listener, by the way. She listens to our episodes, and for that we appreciate it. And we send out every episode. We send out a call to our listeners that if you have something interesting you want to talk about, or if you know of somebody that has something interesting to talk about, be on the show, reach out to us. And she did reach out to me and say, hey, I have these interesting stories that I'm not sure if you'd be interested in. And as soon as she told me, I went, oh my God, yes, let's get this down on tape. And so we are here tonight, and she's going to come on and give us some interesting stories and experiences that happened to her. And I'm sure we're going to have a few questions for her as well. We'll see how she handles those. So, but I got to tell you a story. I'm so into paranormal and ghost story kind of things that when I was a kid, maybe about 12 years old, 13 years old, a few neighborhood kids and I, we used to listen to a local radio talk show host named Larry Glick. And he was on a Boston radio station, and he was overnight for most of his career. And you'd go to bed, you put a little transistor radio under the bed and you would listen and try not to wake up your parents. And he would have people come on with these interesting stories. And a lot of times there were things like ghost stories and stories about UFOs and things of that nature, very similar to another guy named Art Bell, who did the same thing overnight nationwide for years until he passed away. So these friends of mine and I took a tape recorder, an old-fashioned cassette tape recorder, down to the local cemetery, and we put it in the cemetery, and we hit record, and we left. And maybe 11 o'clock at night. And we went back the next day, 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, and we took the cassette tape, which I think was like a 60-minute one on each side. So we had the 60 minutes of tape, and we were all excited. We got around the table, and we hit play, and we heard nothing. Not a cricket. Nothing. And we were so disappointed. I think we expected to hear like voices and partying going on in the cemetery at night. I mean, this is how crazy we were and how much we believe in this stuff. But there is so much interesting stuff. And even in the news lately, there is talk about the government releasing some information on, I think, Roswell and UFO things. And so that'll be interesting to see what they're going to come up with. But anyway, enough about my story. Let's go ahead and bring our guest on. Her name is Tina Sweeney. She is a managed care analyst in the healthcare field, as well as a travel agent on the side. And we'll talk a little bit about about her travel agency at the end of this interview. And she has some interesting stories that I'm excited to hear about, and I know you will be as well. So let's welcome her on. Tina, hello, and welcome to It's Another Sunday podcast.
Hi, Gerry. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to do this. And Eric, hi.
Hey.
We are excited to have you as well. So when you reached out and said you had these stories that you thought might be interesting, and I immediately, I think I blew your eardrums out when I screamed, "Oh my God, yes! Let's get this down." And we've been trying to schedule this, and finally, our schedules met, and here we are. So without further ado, why don't you tell us? I know you have a couple of stories. Why don't you start wherever you want and tell us what strange phenomena might have happened to you?
Well, I think I will go in chronological order. So just as a quick background, my entire family has had experiences with the unexplained and the paranormal. So what might sound, a little offbeat to some, this is all very normal conversation for me. I've been hearing it my whole life. So keeping that in mind, when I was 16 years old, me and my friend had just come back in from hanging out with some other people, and we were heating up like a late dinner or something. And my house is shaped like an L, and the front door of the house leads into the kitchen from the driveway. So we were, just having a conversation, and we were looking out the driveway door, which is, a glass, part of it's glass, the upper part. And at the same time, we saw a man in a bowler style hat and wire rimmed glasses walk through the driveway. And we both jumped down at the same time. It was out of a television show, like a comedy or something. And we looked at each other and at the same time said, "Did you see that?" And we popped back up real quick, and we both saw him walk through the driveway into the other part of the house, the other L shape. And we freaked out. I woke up my mother from a sound sleep at 1 a.m. and two teenage girls who previously thought were a couple of tough asses had to sleep on my mother's bedroom floor that night because we were so scared.
So, did you recognize who this person or being was?
We did not recognize the person that we saw. The town that I live in is one of the oldest established towns in Massachusetts. So, it's a pretty active town as far as ghosts and the unexplained are concerned. So, it could have just been some random passerby or not aware that he had his, physical body had since passed and was just walking maybe the path that he walked before the house was built. Who knows? But to answer your question, we didn't recognize him.
And you knew this was a ghost or an apparition, or as opposed to a real person? How?
Because we watched him walk through into the house.
Oh,
walk
through.
It's shaped
Walk through the walls.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, the house is shaped. I'm sorry if I didn't say that. The house is shaped like an L. So the bottom half is where my kitchen is, and then the wall that he walked through is the other side of the L. So we just watched him walk right into the house, without using a door.
So did y'all go to another part of the house to see if you could see him inside?
We did. He would have gone through what would have been my brother's bedroom at the time. And we ran to that part of the house, but he wasn't there.
What did anybody else see? Did Mom see it, or she just saw the reaction?
She just saw the reaction. Me and my friend at the time had seen the apparition at the same time.
Was this the first time that anything like this had happened to, or anybody in your family had seen this or had any kind of experience like this? Was this like the very first time this all started?
My family has been seeing and been part of like the unexplained and unexplained phenomena for as long as I've known. Like all of my family stories has some sort of ghost story or unexplained situation happening. So this was the first time I personally had seen like a full-bodied apparition.
Did it speak?
No, not this one.
What was the? Well, I guess could you continue going in chronological order with some of these stories?
Definitely. So I had 3 stories. That's the first one. The second story I have is I was probably in my later teens, 19, maybe even 20 years old, and I was lying in bed and I could not fall asleep. And I did that thing that people sometimes do when they close their eyes and try to convince themselves that they're tired and they're going to fall asleep. But I wasn't. I was wide awake and I knew I wasn't going to fall asleep anytime soon. So I opened my eyes and above my head there was a woman, and it looked like she had a veil or maybe a blanket over her head, and she was holding a bundle with what I assumed was a baby. And she was looking right at me. And I shut my eyes tight. Like, maybe it's just film in my eyes. Maybe I did fall asleep. I don't know. So I opened my eyes again, and she had slowly started drifting to the right. But she was still maintaining eye contact with me. I couldn't believe it. I was frozen. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. I couldn't do anything but just keep opening and closing my eyes. So I closed my eyes again real tight, rubbed them, and I opened them again, and I looked up, and she was closer to the wall, which would have led to the outside of the house. I closed my eyes again one more time, and I watched as she disappeared through the wall and out of the house. And that's when I regained the ability to move, and I bolted up out of bed super fast and ran out and slept in the living room.
Wow.
So you were paralyzed? Is that how you described it? Or?
That's what it felt like. I don't know, and because it happened a while ago. I don't know if I was paralyzed by fear or paralyzed like maybe she isn't aware of what she's looking at, and if I don't move, she won't react, sort of thing. I just know that I knew that I should just stay still and that I didn't want to move even if I could. It was very, very, very scary, and just that feeling of dread. Like I didn't feel like I was in danger, but it's just because it was just such a bizarre occurrence. Like I couldn't believe it was happening while it was happening. Because despite all the ghost stories you hear as a child, when it happens to you, it's something completely different.
Was this in the same home as the first story?
Yes. Yep. All the stories tonight will be in the same home, the house that I still currently live in.
Which is a haunted house.
I mean, it's been quiet for the past couple of years, but yeah, I guess you could call it a haunted house. It's old. It's a pretty old house. It was built in 1875. I know it's not old compared to like New England standards, but it's pretty old.
Have y'all ever looked into like maybe who lived there and during the late 1800s, early 1900s, and maybe the history behind the house at all?
So not around that time period, but I know this is going to sound like I'm making it up, but I have a book on the history of my town. And from like one block over from my house to another block over was an indigenous person's burial ground, a Native American burial ground. So all of my property is built on that and, the surrounding houses. And that is documented in a book.
So, like with the man that you saw the wire rim glasses and the the bowler hat. With the woman
Right.
that you saw, were there any kind of clothing that would identify maybe a time period or something?
It was, it might have been mid. The thing is, she didn't look like a woman of like status. She looked like she was like destitute because she had like this like older looking veil or blanket wrapped around like her face and her head. So I couldn't really definitively
Okay.
say what time period she would have been from.
Okay.
And did she speak?
No. She just stared into my soul. She just maintained eye contact the whole time. It was nuts.
Was it a menacing or just kind of just a stare?
It was forlorn. She looked so sad, miserable, like tired. It was it was heavy.
So in the first story, the guy walked through this house.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost as if, I guess, for the lack of better terms, was see through. They could just walk in. Did the woman look like a solid being? I mean, could you see through her? Could you see the other side of the wall, or did it look like there was really this human being standing there?
It looked like how they would like describe it in a movie or a television show. Both of them had the same sort of mass, like light, no color to it, just like white and shadows. And that was it. Yeah, there was like no color. There was some definition in the face, but not too much. But they had the same sort of, like I said, like light and shadowy sort of appearance, almost like made from smoke or something like that. I think the term that the ghost hunter people would say is ectoplasm.
Is it like it?
I'm not saying.
And see, I've never seen a ghost or anything, so almost like a cloud.
Yes,
Is it almost
exactly.
okay? Okay,
Like fog rolling in or something.
yeah. So, can you please continue on with the history of the house with the ghosts that you've seen and the unexplained?
Sure. Should I just go right into my other story?
Yeah. Tell as many as you want.
Okay, cool. Because I got stories for days. You can edit that out. The most significant story, just because there were so many witnesses, happened back in the mid 2000s. So I'm probably in my mid to early to mid 20s. And there were 6 of us in the dining room. It was a Saturday night. And we were playing Texas Hold'em. And, just laughing. There was music in the background, like having a fine old time for ourselves. And then at the same time, and again, this sounds like it's like scripted, but I promise there are people to corroborate my story. We all just stopped because we felt, I can't explain it, we felt the room get heavy. Like the air had gotten denser. It almost seems like the lighting like dimmed a little. It was the craziest thing. We all stopped dead in our tracks, all of us, whatever we were doing. And I forget who said it, but someone said, "Do you feel that?" And we all said, "Yeah, we feel that." So we immediately abandoned our game and decided to go ghost hunting in the house. So, like any logical place, you start in the basement, of course, right? So we went down there and we were, calling on the ghosts, and we didn't have like any fancy recording equipment, so we just used like our, I don't know, iPhone 3, whatever generation it was at that point, and just, recording audio. So then we didn't hear anything. So then we decided to go up into my bedroom. And we all sat on the bed. We lit a couple candles. And, we started talking to this ghost, or what we thought was a ghost. And we were asking it questions, and we were doing that call and response thing. Like, if you understand, knock yes for once, knock 2 for no if you don't want to talk, things like that. So nothing happened. Nothing happened that night. We were so disappointed. We thought for certain we were gonna see like a whole slew of ghosts and have a party. We don't know what we were thinking, but we just knew nothing happened, and we were so disappointed. So I don't know what happened. Like maybe the next week or so, one of my friends that was there, he's a very talented artist, and he does like a lot of mixed media, a lot of multimedia art. So we had brought it up the next time we were all hanging out. And he has, and I don't know, forgive me, I don't know like the terms, like the sound mixing equipment that he had or something like that. So we sent him the audio file, and he like cleaned out the ambient noise or something. Like I don't know, I can't explain exactly what he did, but he cleaned up the audio. So we started playing it back, and we heard things. We heard a man in a gruff voice say, "Get out of my house." We heard another man say to that man, "Stop it, you're scaring the kids." And when I did that call and response thing, if you want to communicate, knock once for yes. And before I could say knock twice for no, it was a loud 1, 2 for no. Like, he didn't want to communicate. So when we heard that, we must have listened. I wish I kept it, but we must have listened to that thing dozens and dozens of times, because we could not believe that we had picked up on that when, just when it was happening live, we didn't hear anything. So
are you sure that the guy that cleaned it up just wasn't messing with you?
Well, no, because he cleaned it up in front of us. I know.
Okay.
That would totally make sense. We were all there while he cleaned it up.
Okay.
I mean, if he has like the tricks to like enter things, maybe, but I don't. He was. Well, I mean, to make a logical sense of it, yeah, he totally could have done that, but he wasn't like the kind of devious guy to do that. He's a real sweet, honest kid.
Was he one of the ones in the room with all of you when the room got heavy?
Yes, he was.
Okay. So you had those. I would have shit if I heard anything on that tape or that my cemetery tape I spoke of. Why are you still in that house?
It's a lovely house, I promise. I wonder if they're gonna come out and say hello tonight since I'm talking all about them. Probably not, but
please, let's, 1 for yes, 2 for no.
I know, really.
Wow.
Say hello.
Has anything happened? So some of these were like in the past. Has anything recently occurred, say within, the last year, a couple years, or when was the last time something happened?
A few months ago. But the thing is, these they have like a bunch of little itty bitty things. Like there's not like a long drawn out story for it, but I can just tell you like the random goings on that I've observed in the house. The most creepiest one happened maybe like a year or two ago. It was definitely pre-pandemic. Me and my boyfriend were getting ready for work. We leave around the same time, and So I was getting dressed, and I was looking out into the den from the bedroom, and the bathroom is to the right, and then you can walk through our laundry room to the left of the bedroom. So I was getting ready, and out of my peripheral, I saw him walk out of the bathroom and go into the laundry room, and I heard footsteps too, like going into the laundry room. So I called out his name because I had a question or whatever. I said, "Hey, David." And he walked out of the bathroom that was on the right and said, "What's up?" Like, didn't you just go into the laundry room? And he said, no. So that's one thing. I heard and saw out of my peripheral someone walk out of the bathroom into the laundry room, but obviously it wasn't him. And this could definitely easily be explained, but I know I didn't do it, and he hasn't fessed up to it. We went to my mother's house for Thanksgiving dinner, and before we left, we set up the Christmas tree, but we didn't put any ornaments on it. And the way he's very methodical when he does things, so when he puts things away, like he makes sure there's no ornament or anything, any piece of anything on the tree except for the tree. We had used an artificial tree. And when we got home, there was a big red ornament, like right in the center of the tree. And he says he didn't do it, and I know I didn't do it.
I'm fascinated and and intrigued. You know, I've heard stories like this before. I have, you know, from folks that have called into the radio shows or sometimes newspapers or something like that, and actually other friends who think their homes were haunted because they would go into a room and the chair that has always been on the left side of the room is now on the right side of the room and nobody did it. And like you said, you can explain those things if somebody moved it and didn't fess up to it, or
right.
It was, you know, but so it's kind of, I think I know the answer to this, but do you believe in all of this stuff is really going on or has really happened? I mean, do you believe in ghosts and the paranormal?
I mean, with all the stories and things I've mentioned tonight, the obvious answer would be yes, but like there's still a logical portion of my brain that says there has to be an explanation. There has to be. Like this can't, you know, this isn't just.
And that's where I was going with that question. I wasn't doubting your stories by any means. You obviously,
right.
you know, you've, and I know you, and you know, you're not just trying to get this. You're not on the podcast just to speak for. This is not a stunt.
No, not at all.
And you know, you've told me these stories before. We even talked about having you come on the show. So my question was not that these stories aren't real, but do you believe that this is really going on, or do you think, as you said, that there's got to be an explanation for this? Maybe I had a fever. Maybe because I can remember one time what happened to me was, and I had some surgery done. And I was on some medication. I was home, and I was sitting in the living room watching television. And I saw somebody, as clear as I see you guys right now, standing up on the television, and he was talking to me. Now, I don't remember what he said. I was talking back to him, and my dad walked in the room and said, "Who the hell are you talking to?" And then, just like that, it was gone. And so I attributed that to, they probably over-medicated me. So, you know, but it doesn't sound like you weren't drinking. You were 12 years old or 13 years old, so obviously you weren't drinking or doing drugs, right? So, yeah, it's fascinating stuff. Have you ever talked to anybody like a medium about this stuff and asked them about what it could be, or?
I have been to mediums. And they never explained the things that were going on in my house specifically, but they've never explained specifically why there's so much activity in the house, except to say that because me and my mom will go to them together, and they'll just say that there's so much energy, especially surrounding my mother. My mom has been getting told since she was a child that she has so much psychic power, but she has admitted that she's too nervous to tap into it. My mother was raised Roman Catholic, and so something like that is kind of considered occulty, you know what I mean? And she doesn't really feel comfortable delving into that world, even though countless psychics have told her that she has a gift to do it. But going back to the medium, yeah, she would say that these spirits are drawn to our family because of that strong psychic connection and ability to, you know, other, I don't know, not realms, but the spirit world, if that, you know, does exist.
Just fascinating to me, and interesting. the unexplained has always been an interest to me, and UFOs the same thing. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I believe in UFOs. I can't believe we're the only beings in the entire universe. Why would it just be us? Could there be, you know, other beings on other planets or other universes or something? You know, I'm a show me guy though, so you have to really show me. And like I said, if I was sitting in your house and the room got heavy and I saw something walk past me, there'd be a mess to clean up because and it'd just be it'd be a puddle. I would just turn into you know interesting, and the fact that you stay there and so well, let me ask you this: are you frightened living there? I know you're still there and you love the house, but are you afraid to?
Sometimes, and I'm going to be 40 in a couple of years, but sometimes if I'm alone and like Eric described, it's a dark and stormy night, like I'll get irrationally nervous a little bit because, you know, that's the setting for a ghost to appear, because that's what we've seen in media for so many years, in movies and television. Like, this is when the ghosts come out. So sometimes when like it's that kind of, you know, mood, that setting, I'll get a little nervous. But as far I've lived here, I lived in this house since 1985. I've never felt in danger from the beings. I've never, you know, felt like there was going to be like any violence. And I think that most of them, you know, according to like research and other things that I've heard and read, like a lot of them aren't even aware that they're passed over. It's just energy just recycling over and over. So I suspect that maybe the first two stories that I mentioned, those two beings were just that recycled energy going through the motions over and over. I think that the third story, when the two men were talking, were obviously intelligent beings because they were carrying a conversation. So
the research that you've done, what are some of the explanations for the ghosts and the apparitions? I'm curious because I don't know.
yeah.
And so I'm wondering, like, what are some of the theories out there and explanations for why these things happen? Or
So when it comes to like the heaviness of a room, or just like the feeling of uneasiness, that could be attributed to electromagnetic energy. Like there's a lot of electricity running through the currents in that room in that particular moment. So your hair stands on end. That could just literally just be static electricity running through the house. The apparitions, it could be, you know, like a light, a car headlight passing through the window and creating shadows on the wall. And if you're already like in a darkened room, like it might, and if you're like, you know, sleep deprived, something like that, yeah, that could be explained. But I wasn't sleep deprived. I couldn't sleep for the second story. And the first story, there were no cars passing by because it was so late at night. Those could explain the things. When it comes to like the visual apparitions, yeah, I think it's just the car headlights. And if it's outside, obviously it could be some sort of weather phenomena that's shaped like a person, because our brains will try to make sense of what we're looking at, right? So if we just see like a ghostly shape passing through the field at night, our brain will say, oh, that's a person, when it really could just be a bit of fog, you know? Who knows?
right, it's funny, especially camping in the woods at night. You know, if the moonlight hits things a certain way, they look like something different. You know, they could look like a person or whatever, the way the moonlight will hit a tree, you know, especially if there's fog and everything or whatever. It's funny how things can look like people or, but, you know, like you said in that one story, that there were no, you know, you weren't sleep deprived. There were no headlights. So, I mean, what's some of the explanations for it from a more of a like a spirit world kind of aspect. I'm curious what, um, like you said, it could be recycled energy or whatever. What are some of those theories? I'm just curious as to what
Yeah,
some
a
of
lot
the
of.
ideas are.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
You're good.
Yeah, like I had mentioned, a lot of the research that's been done on the paranormal and the unexplained and ghosts and apparitions, a lot of it they suspect is because we're all energy. Everything is created from energy. So they think that a lot of times a spirit, a soul, whatever you want to call it, isn't aware that they're passed on. And so they'll just keep repeating a lot of the same actions they would if they were alive, like walking down the street or, walking down the street and holding their baby or any sort of other just everyday thing that they would do. And they also think that sometimes it's not even an apparition. It is literally like just like the sounds, not necessarily the full body ones that I experience, but sometimes they say just like the sounds are just reverbing from years and years ago. Things like that.
And none of these you could identify, or none of them ever identified themselves. Or did you ever go back and look at, who, I think Eric asked who owned the house in the past or something like that. Could it have been the person that lived before, did somebody die in the house or, could.
Someone did die in the house, I believe. This is what was told to me. The previous owner's mother, I believe, passed in the house on the second floor, which was where we heard the voices, but those were men voices. We heard this. We didn't hear any women's voices. Another quick little story is that bedroom that I was in, it was a master bedroom, so there was like a little bathroom off of it. And my sister-in-law was using my bathroom, and she had the bathroom door open because the bedroom door was closed, so she had that privacy. But she said she was using the bathroom, and then she looked up and she saw a man in like a scally hat, and he was tall and thin, and he was looking out the window down below. And I think she closed the bathroom door when she saw him, and then when she reopened it, he was gone. So she ran out of the room. And at the time, she wasn't my sister-in-law. She was my brother's girlfriend. So she hadn't, she didn't really know like the older relatives. And the one that she saw, she discovered, she was looking at, I'm sorry, I'm saying too much. The one, when she realized who she had saw, she told us, she was looking through old photos, and she said that the man she saw looking out the window was my deceased grandfather. She said it looked just like that man when she pointed out his picture. So I don't know if he comes to visit, because he didn't die here. There was no association with this house for him except that, his family lived here. So I think that maybe he was an intelligent being visiting. I believe that a lot too. I believe that our past loved ones will come and visit, especially in dreams, but that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah, I know that. I know the dream part is true, having lost my dad, at least at the very beginning. I think it's a normal process that you will have dreams, that you will see and talk to the person who is deceased. I know, that happened to me, but I've never seen my dad, like, in the house, or at least not when I've been awake, or conscious, other than sleep. So dreams is a whole other thing I'm into, and would love to talk to anybody that can explain dreams or anything like that. I think that's another fascinating show. So if you have interest in that, we can have you back to talk about that. This has been absolutely fascinating, frightening, and fun. All of the F's. Some of our listeners might add an F in there. This has been great. I've been looking forward to doing this episode. I don't have any other questions. Derek, do you have any other questions for Tina?
Um, I don't think so. So that was very, very interesting. And like I've heard people tell me stories like that or whatever, but never really go in depth and never really, you know, have like the whole collection of experiences. Um, like you've said that you've had with your family and in the house, and but that's very, very interesting.
Thank you.
Yeah, and before we move on and talk about your travel agency, if something should occur again after this podcast, please reach out to me. Let me know. We'll have you back to talk about it, and possibly maybe see if we can get some other guests to come on, and maybe we can have a discussion and see if it can be explained or what they seem to think about it. I think it's fascinating. I hope our listeners will find it. I think they will. Some of them will find it absolutely fascinating. It's always fun to delve in into the unknown or the unexplained, as you said. So, thank you for the story, the stories.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. But like family stories too, like none that I've personally experienced, but there's a lot of, stories that have been passed down that if you ever want to have another discussion about this, I will gladly share those.
Sure, and we can also bring the family on board and have a multi guest podcast with everybody, and just kind of do an interview with everyone, and just let y'all talk about the story. I don't know. I'm just fascinated. Always have been fascinated with the unexplained and the whole paranormal thing. So we can talk about this as many times as the listeners will allow us to do that. Before we say goodbye, let's talk about you're an independent travel agent. You are a Disney file, I believe is what they call it. You are absolutely love Disney. Tell us a little bit about your travel agency and what you do, and what you specialize in, and how people can get in touch with you, and if they're interested in booking a vacation for Disney or Universal or cruises. I think you do. Tell us about the business.
Sure. So, I am an independent travel agent, but I do work for an agency called Soaring Holidays. I am fully trained to sell Disney, Universal, most cruises, NCL, Celebrity. NCL is Norwegian. Celebrity, and I do land all-inclusive vations, specializing mostly in the Caribbean and Mexico. To become a Disney travel agent, there is like a rigorous training. It's called the College of Disney, and there's so many courses and quizzes, so you really have to know your stuff to be able to sell Disney. And Universal has the same sort of training. I mean, a lot of the places do have some sort of training module you can take to learn about what you're selling, but Disney is really stringent, and you have to pass the tests in order to be able to sell Disney. So I'm certified for all of those, and even if you just you don't have to book with me, you just have questions, you want to talk Disney, you have questions about the dining, about the restrictions, what they're allowing now, what's still, impacted by the pandemic, I will gladly talk vacations all day with someone, and ghosts if you're interested in that. But to reach out for anything, a quote, if you have questions, you can get in touch with me at Tina Sweeney Vacations at gmail.com, and you can also sign up to be a client at soaringholidays.com. There'll be a link that says Meet the Agent, and you'll find my picture there and a little blurb about my specialties with booking and all that fun stuff. And it's a great time to book because everything's starting to open. Everyone wants to get out and see the world again, so I am here to help with that.
We're going to put the email address and the website in the description of this episode, so you can check it out. Tina Sweeney Vacations@gmail.com or soaringholidays.com. Again, we'll have that in our description for those folks who want to find out about Disney vacations or maybe take a cruise. Are prices, do you think, or are you seeing prices higher because people are coming back, or are there some really good deals out there just trying to get people to come back and take these vacations? What are you seeing now?
I see a little bit of both, honestly. It's the airline tickets are much higher, obviously, than they were during the pandemic, but a lot of the cruises and the all-inclusive, especially, they're offering great promotions right now just because they want to fill their rooms again because they had gone, without business for so long because of the pandemic. So there's still a lot of incentive for people to vacation to these places.
That's great. And again, Tina Sweeney Vacations@gmail.com. Check the description for the link to her email and to the travel agency she works for. Tina, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and share with us your stories. I know that sometimes it's a little bit when it comes to the unexplained, that some people don't like to be forthcoming. They're a little shy to tell their story. They think that, people might think they're crazy. They think what they're going to think. So I applaud your courage for not only telling us the story, but staying in that house. I would have been out of there in a heartbeat. So I am that kind of a wimp, even though, I love it. I just don't want to see it. So thank you very much for joining us. And in a future episode, I think we could do an episode on Disney and Universal. You and I talked about that before. We could talk for hours. You could talk for hours on the wonderful world of Disney, and maybe give some of our listeners who might be going on vacation sometime in the future Disney some tips on how to get through all the parks and stuff like that.
Tricks, pointers, I've got them all.
Fantastic.
I would love to do that. Yes.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again so much for joining us. We appreciate it, and we look forward to having you back. And if something happens, let us know right away. We'll get you right back on the show.
I will. Thank you guys so much for letting me tell my stories. I really appreciate it.
So, Erich, that was everything and more that I expected this to be. What a fascinating guest she is, and interesting stories. What do you make of it?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. But those were very awesome and interesting stories. That was great.
We got to definitely have her back, especially if something else happens, because I'm just fascinated. Now that she's told the world the story, will these apparitions appear, and what will they think? Will they applaud? Will they scold her? I don't know.
Maybe they'll get shy and
go away. Well, I hope we didn't scare them away.
I don't know. We may have. You and me may have scared them away, Jerry.
That's just why I tell you I have a face for radio. I can scare anybody away. Thanks to Tina Sweeney for joining us today. If you, the listener, have an interesting story like Tina, and you want to be a part of our show, please send us an email. Reach out to us at itsanothersunday.podcast@gmail.com. It's Another Sunday Podcast at gmail.com. And even if you know somebody that might have some interesting stories, we would love to have you. There is no topics necessarily off limits, so email us and let us know what you got. We do have some other guests coming up in the future. We're going to talk again to our resident shaving razor collector. That should be another interesting episode. And we also have somebody who is very much into hockey, and there's an interesting twist to that. And as we get closer to that episode, we'll reveal what that all means. So we are at the end of this episode. Erich, my friend, I am going to leave the final word to you.
Thank you so much, Tina, for coming on. That was awesome. So, and for all our listeners out there, just remember, roll with the changes.
It's Another Sunday Podcast. It's produced by Erich and Gerry. Music composed by Tom Blaze and written by Tom Blaze. Check out Tom's YouTube channel at Tom Blaze. Again, thanks to our guest today, Tina Sweeney. Check out her travel agent business. You can email her at tinasweeneyvacations@gmail.com or check out her travel agency employer at soaringholidays.com. Links in the description. That's going to do it for us. Thanks for listening.